Welcome to Soulful Latte podcast, a weekly conversation between two sisters to help us and our virtual friends online, like yourselves, grow in life and in faith. We're your hosts. I am Qudsiyah.
And I'm Samia.
And this is season 2.
Welcome to episode 4. Now, this episode is very special and we're very excited to bring it to you because we have a guest. You're used to listening to both of our voices, but today you're going to have a third voice, and that is Nobera Chaudhary, also known as Coach Nobera. In this episode, we're going to talk about forgiveness, self-forgiveness, what it means, how to achieve it, what are some signs, and all of that good stuff. And so we thought it would be great to have someone who has the knowledge and experience on just this very topic. Coach Nobera is actually a counselor and life coach for over 9 years. She states that her goal is to support women manage their stress, anger, anxiety, and feeling of depression so they can strengthen their self-worth and confidence, creating the life and relationships pleasing to Allah. She has an honors Bachelor of Psychology and Sociology from University of Toronto, Diploma in Social Service Work from Centennial College, Life Coaching Certification from Discover You, and Continuous Self-Study. Me and Qudsiyah, we both met her on Instagram and we have been learning since then, and we're sure that you're going to learn from her too. All of her contact information, including her website and the services she offers to you, will be linked in the show notes of this episode. We have a lot of questions prepared and we are just ready to take notes and grow. So let's get started. Thank you, Coach Nobera, for coming on our podcast today. We thought it was very perfect to have someone who knows what they're talking about on here. So you're very much needed in our conversations.
Thank you for having me. This is very exciting for me. Even though I'm recovering from a cold, that's why my voice is a little odd. But happy to be here. I'm feeling better now. My head is not heavy. So yes, we can have a good conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
And you will be on the ground with us, not in the clouds, which is with the cold. So today we wanted to really focus on self-forgiveness. We both have different understanding. Before we started recording this podcast, we were talking about self-forgiveness. I was like, is this in regards to spirituality or not? So there's many different facets self-forgiveness can take. So what is self-forgiveness to you?
So self-forgiveness to me, and this is something that I have gone through myself, it came about... typically it appears around some kind of failure or something that you have done in the past that you regret. And what happens is that that you're not happy about yourself, you're not happy about what you did, there's some guilt associated, there's some shame associated with it, and then you end up not forgiving yourself. And then it comes out in so many different phases, and there are also so many different reasons for it to happen, not just the ones that I just mentioned. And then what happens is that you spiral down in some ways. So for me personally, it came out as not taking risks anymore because I didn't want to fail anymore. So self-forgiveness meant that forgiving myself for the mistakes that I have made, acknowledging what I did, and then deciding to move forward from that. So that's why self-forgiveness was important for me, and it comes out in different ways for my clients as well. So it could be in a relationship that hasn't worked out, or there has been some kind of physical, emotional, or psychological abuse that has happened that brought out this shame or guilt and self-criticism. So overall, and inshallah we'll talk about this more in depth soon, that forgiveness has to happen, self-forgiveness has to happen in order for us to move forward in any way. So then, realizing what is it that you're forgiving anyway, what is the guilt and what is the shame, why is it there anyway?
You use the word like spiraling down. What are some other ways that we can recognize that, I think I need to work on something and I don't? What are some ways that I can recognize it in myself?
So it could come out in different ways. So one of the things could be that having some unrealistic expectations for yourself over and over again. So I have people, I do group coaching. So in my group coaching, it's people who are working on certain goals that they have had on hold for many years, and they just want to do it. And here, what comes up weekly, because we do this weekly accountability, what comes up is that really, really, really high expectations being set on a regular basis. And what that does is that the person doesn't reach it. And then they start to believe that, man, whatever I tell myself, it's just not going to happen really. Or some people say, you know what, I always plan it, but I never do it. There's certain things that, people say, or you know what, like, I don't want to try because I know if I try, like, it's really not going to work. So what's the point? So that's one, like having really unrealistic expectations. I mean, having high expectations is good, but something that's completely unrealistic. And so you'll know at the back of your mind that you're not going to reach that. You're never going to reach it. Another one is, like I said, like not trying, or giving up even before you start, or you start and somehow you sabotage your success by doing something and saying that, well, see, like I wasn't meant to do this anyway. An example of this is, if you have to write an exam and it's a really difficult exam, and then maybe like you don't eat properly, or maybe like, you sleep through the test, or you get busy helping someone else. And then you're like, you know what, I couldn't study because I had to do all these things. So that's like self-sabotage. So we do these kinds of different things to sabotage our own success. And then we blame it on our incapability, but it's really, a lot of the time, it's not even your incapability. It's really the preparation and the heart that you put into it.
So it's like something is happening, I'm trying to move forward, but for some reason I'm just unable to do so. And I just need to look in why I'm having such feelings.
Yep, so that's one. Another one is having the internal critical thoughts of yourself, being judgmental towards yourself. So that's where, because if you're not able to do something, what's the reason? Or if you make a mistake or something hasn't worked out for you, what's the reason for that? And that's where a lot of these voices come to play, where, name calling, you're so dumb, why would you even do that? This is so stupid, it was such a stupid mistake. Or like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why would you do something like that? It's there, just things like that. And it's so subtle because it's in your mind. Right? It's not loud, it's not written, it's not in front of you. So sometimes you don't even know that it's happening. And sometimes it happens for years. So you don't keep track of where it came from. All you know that these are your thoughts. And maybe it could be that you had, maybe your parents were really hard on you, or maybe they weren't happy with what you did. And eventually you believe that, you know what, even if you try, you're not going to be good enough. Or maybe it could be, a teacher in grade 4 who marked your paper and she said that, you know what, you can't really, writing is not your strength. And then from there on, you believe that you're not going to write. That's not something for you. Or someone made a comment, in class about how you look. It happened in childhood, but maybe you just held on to that. And that became a part of your thoughts. So it's not just about, having the difficulty to do something and not able to do it, but also what is the formula that's playing behind what's outwardly shown, like what's happening behind the scenes. And we can only know what's happening once we start to, listen and understand and recognize what's happening without guilt or shame.
Actually, it's really interesting that some of the things you mentioned, I was like, oh my God, yes, because did you resonate with it too, Qudsiyah?
Yes. Samia and I have spoken lots about just shame and, extending that gentleness towards us and why that is so hard. I resonated with how a lack of self-forgiveness can, the guilt and the shame can manifest in different ways. And one of those things is also self-loathing. And when we engage in self-loathing, we believe that we're unworthy of love and belonging and any good that might come to us. So I guess what I want to ask is, how do you know when you need to forgive yourself? Are there any signs that we need to look out for to know that this is the time I need to forgive myself now?
I truly believe that forgiveness should be unconditional. Self-compassion should be unconditional. So you actually don't need a reason for it. I don't think you need to be convinced that you need to forgive yourself. Because if you just look at how, what we're taught in our deen, and that is asking Allah for forgiveness, knowing that you might commit the sin again, knowing that Allah has created you to be, I don't like the word sinner, but, we hear that, Allah has created us like that, because if Allah didn't expect any sins from us, He would have just created more angels, because that's what angels do, right? Angels don't commit sins. Angels don't have intellect. Angels just worship Allah. That's what their creation is for. Not the same for humans. And how perfect is it that our, the first person that Allah created, the first human made a mistake, and how is that not the biggest lesson of our lives? That Allah created this human being. Oh, great. The first human being Allah created. Wow. Good job. Right. And then what? He just makes a mistake and he gets kicked out of kicked out of Jannah. So that's our origin, really. So of course we're meant to make mistakes. Of course we're meant to commit sins. Of course we'll do wrong things. That's just part of our being. If you fully accept that, okay, that is just part of your being. Oh no, I'm never going to make this mistake again. No, you could, because that is part of your being. Once you fully accept that, then you know that, okay, forgiveness is right after that. After mistake comes forgiveness. But in order for that forgiveness to come, you have to seek it. So when you commit a sin, what's the first thing that we do is you're supposed to feel bad in your heart. That's from the sunnah, right? You're supposed to feel bad in your heart, and then you're supposed to ask Allah for forgiveness. And then you're supposed to, correct it or change your way or do something better. Stay away from it. Something like that. It's kind of to change your environment so that you don't make that same mistake again. And then if you make that same mistake again, rinse and repeat. You got to do the same thing over and over again. So now coming back to us, is that recognizing your mistake, forgiving yourself, because with forgiveness comes self-compassion. If you don't forgive yourself, and if you're angry with yourself that I'm not going to forgive myself because I deserve to feel bad, then you don't make amazing decisions, and you don't take amazing steps from a place of being angry and grumpy and sad and guilty and shameful. You don't do positive, empowered things from a place of feeling anger towards yourself and not forgiving yourself. Only good will come out of you when you do forgive yourself, and when you are compassionate, and when you understand yourself and you're kind to yourself. Only then good things will come out of it. It's pretty much it needs to be unconditional, and also, failure. Once you fail, what you can do, if you want something, then you can decide, okay, what happened that led to this failure, and what can I do differently, and what kind of rules can I have for myself? Is it realistic? Is it unrealistic? What would happen if I fail again? This is something I personally did for myself. At 1 year, because I had a hard time with my business, and I'm not sure if you read about this because I posted this before, is that 1 year I decided that I will make mistakes this year. This will be my year of making mistakes. And it was the hardest thing for me because there are a lot of things that I didn't do because I was scared of making mistakes, of screwing up. But finally, when I made the decision that, I'm going to make mistakes, because for me, mistakes meant growth. Mistakes meant that actually trying something, whether it works or not. So that would increase my courage. That would increase my confidence. It would teach me things that I didn't know existed, because we learn very well from our mistakes. So doing that changed the game of my business, my self-esteem, my perception of things completely, because it was like, giving yourself that permission that, it's okay to make mistakes. And then once you do, then there's nothing that you can run away from. There's no failure that you're running away from anymore.
So while you're working on forgiving yourself, like you figured out all of this and you're like, okay, I'm going to work at it. I feel that it is so overwhelming to go through that. How do you forgive yourself and then kind of move forward with life at the same time?
That's a very good question. I think it needs to happen at the same time. Sometimes we want to heal before we move on. It could work, but other times I find that it's a very long journey. Forgiving yourself, having self-compassion, having self-love. It's a long journey and it needs to happen. This process needs to happen on a consistent basis. Because if you try new things, if you have relationships and you're constantly making mistakes, let's just say, if you take the example of a mother, right? A mother wants to be a cool mother, a chill mother, but then she's constantly losing it on her kids. She's, bedtime, the morning starts off all nice and positive, and then by, evening time, you're losing it. Like, you're really upset with the kids, and then kids go to sleep, and then you start feeling guilty. And then you're like, what did I do? I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have said this. You know what, inshallah, tomorrow's going to be a new day. And it's kind of that cycle that, it keeps happening. So doesn't mean that you become that perfect mother and then you decide that, okay, I should forgive myself before I, forgive myself first and then I'll be good to my kids. No, it needs to happen on a regular basis because it's just part of life. It's part of your process. And you just need to continuously do this. So one thing, the first step for sure, because I talked about listening to your inner voice, right? Secondly, being empathetic towards yourself so you understand where you're even coming from. So no, you're not finishing this book. It's not because you're lazy. It could be because you're tired. It could be because your iron is low. It could be because you're not getting enough sleep because the baby's sleeping next to you. It could be because, you're in a fight with your husband and it's causing you stress. But then you might just call it laziness. Right there. It's something so simple. Everyone says that, I'm just lazy. I'm just a bum. I'm just a couch potato. So simple. Sounds almost innocent. But that is something that's harming, and that's something that's that you're reminding yourself of constantly, because then now you want to do something. You want to make some changes. You want to get healthy. Yeah, but I'm lazy. I'm not really going to do that. Because you have attached that identity to yourself. So for some self-compassion and acceptance to come, in order for that to come, you have to also be empathetic, just understanding yourself, being curious. Okay, so you always get angry when this happens. This seems like a trigger. Why is that a trigger? Did something happen that triggered you? And then you can think about it. Oh yeah, I felt like this, 2 years ago when this person said something to me. Okay, what other time did you feel this way? So these are questions you're asking yourself. Asking yourself questions that would make you curious about yourself. So if you're seeing certain patterns in your behavior, instead of just name calling, you can start looking for, okay, where did this even come from? Just being curious. And then maybe you'll start recognizing, why certain things happen, why you're behaving a certain way, why you're saying certain things to yourself. So number 1 is recognizing what you're saying. And number 2, understanding yourself and figuring out also, where is that voice coming from? Like I mentioned, is it like a voice of a parent? Is it a voice of a bully? Where is it coming from? I just spoke with a client, and she's a mother of 3. And to this day, well, not to this day, I mean, up until she was working with me, and she constantly had the voice that you're not good at it. What makes you, who gave you the permission to teach? Who said you're good enough to teach this? There's something that, she wanted to have a program, and that was the voice that constantly kept coming to her. And that was the voice of her father. that her father would tell her siblings, okay, they can do whatever. But that with her, it was like, no, but you can't do it. You're not able to do this, go do something else. But this voice now, she's married, she has children, and still it's this same voice that's coming. And alhamdulillah, eventually she recognized that, this is it. And then a week later, she went ahead and launched her program because she recognized that this is not really her voice. It's a thought, it's a belief that was given to her, and she took it. So all you have to do is detach yourself from that. Now, doesn't mean this will never come back. So the next step here is taking a step, doing something that would get you out of this mind space. So now let's just use her example. It could be that she launched her program. She's getting customers or clients. And now she's like, okay, I can't manage my time. I shouldn't have done this. This was such a big mistake. I'm not able to do this. Why did I even do this? That's one way. That's one way to go, right? Another way is that, okay, I haven't done this before. This is really overwhelming. What can I do? I need to figure this out. So these thoughts can keep coming to you again and again and again. So like I said, it's a constant process of forgiving, making mistakes, making mistakes, or the past coming up, or guilt and shame coming up. But you would have to constantly keep taking these steps, because there's really no other way. If you're not growing, you're dying. It's a quote from somewhere. I think Tony Robbins, said this, but it's like there are so many quotes similar to this, so I'm sure he's not the originator of this. So really, like, not taking action and being stuck is really not an option. So all you have to do is you have to keep taking that step, moving forward, and then forgiving yourself, and then moving forward and getting rid of that guilt and moving forward. So that's so I would say, if there are 3 things that one person can do, that one would be listening to your inner voice. Number 2 would be understanding yourself, so showing that empathy and actually being curious about who you are and what you are and why you behave a certain way. And number 3 is always taking action, taking small little actions consistently in order to move forward, or else it's just not possible.
I'm actually really glad that you mentioned the story about the father, because I feel like it would be really difficult for me to say that and just assume that everyone feels the same. I feel that a lot of South Asian culture is steeped in shame and is steeped in self-criticism and all of that. What is your experience? Is that true that we have a little bit more? Because I'm assuming you've met clients from different parts of the world. And
I'm South Asian.
Oh, exactly. So how do you get yourself out of that? How do you say, okay, like, how do you escape from that mentality?
I feel like it's also a whole mindset shift and a whole internal dialogue shift. Mm-hmm. Because, for example, I relate to what you're saying in the Asian culture of shame. In our previous episode, we spoke about how we've heard children be taught comparison from the beginning. So this person is this way, why can't you be more like them? And that we've spoken about how that stays with you, and that shame, as you grow older, it gets deeper and deeper as it sits within you. So yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, this is it's a tough one, and it comes up quite a bit. Now, couple of things. What you mentioned is that it's something that needs to change within you. It's a decision that you have to make. So let's start off with that. With the decision that you have to make, that, you know what, you don't have to be okay with this. Just because it came your way, it doesn't have to be a part of your life, right? So that's one, making that decision that, you know what, let's unlearn certain things. Why do I believe this? Actually being critical about your beliefs. Okay, why is it here? Is it serving me? Is it helping me? No, if it's not helping, then I don't need to keep it. Another one is a lot of the times we go through a lot of, like, we analyze ourselves when we have children. That's when people start to think, like, they see certain behaviors and they're like, whoa, where did this come from? And it's probably because, they saw their parents do it. And that's when you decide that, okay, do you want to continue this way, or do you want to do something different with your kids? Is there something that you learned and you want to be different? So doing that. So not repeating the same mistakes, which means you would have to stop and analyze what you're doing. Sometimes we have like cultural practices where, like, yeah, we just do it like that. That's just how we do it. But why? And it happens when there's, like, interracial marriages. That's when people are like, oh, but why is there this tradition? We're like, I don't know, it's just something we do. Because that's when there's someone there who's questioning it. But typically we don't. So that's one, questioning where it came from and is it serving you. Something that I always ask myself is, like, if something makes sense or doesn't make sense, I ask myself, okay, would I be able to trade places with them? Do I want to do that? So if there's certain things, like, let's say there are certain people who are, like, constantly, criticizing and whatnot, and that's something that's in your head, I can ask myself, okay, do I want to trade places with them? And I can look at their life. Are they happy? Are they where they want to be? Are their relationships good? Are they happy with themselves? Are they happy with people around them? And if it's a no, then you ask yourself, why not? What is it about them that you don't like, that you're not happy with, that you want to detach yourself from? And detaching yourself after recognizing that, okay, this is a part of who you are. It made you who you are, but now it's time to kind of, thank it and let it go. You know what? This is what I learned. I learned to become strong because of this criticism here and this judgment here, but now I want to cut myself off of that. It's not a part of me anymore. Another one is staying away from an unhealthy, toxic environment. I have spoken about toxic people a lot. And this is something that's very important, because if you have the same exposure to toxic people, toxic environments, then it would be extremely difficult for you to change the way you talk to yourself and what you think about yourself and all these, these things that you learn from your culture. So now specifically, the South Asian culture. Because if you're feeling drained, if you're feeling down when you're talking to these people, then it's just not serving you, which means you need to keep yourself, you have to keep a safe distance from them. Now with that comes a lot of guilt, comes a lot of shame, because people will tell you that how dare you do something like that? It's family, they're your parents, or this is your brother, or this is your cousin, or this is your uncle or your aunt. But in the end, you have to choose this for yourself. And I spoke about the story of Yaqub alayhi salam before, many times before, because it's mentioned in the Quran that Yaqub alayhi salam told Yusuf alayhi salam not to tell his brothers about the dream that he saw. Yeah. The dream that where he saw Yusuf alayhi salam, he saw that the sun and the moon and the stars were prostrating to him. And Yaqub alayhi salam told them, don't tell this to your brothers. Right there, we can see Yaqub alayhi salam, he was a wise man. He was not an unfair father. He loved his children. He, obviously he was, close to perfection, because of which Allah gave him prophethood. He has that elevated status. So what we learn is that it's okay. You don't have to be close to people. You don't have to say things to people just because they're family. You have to show kindness. You have to, serve your parents. Other than that, you can keep a safe distance if something's not serving you. You can speak up and say that you're not okay if people say these things, that you're not okay with it. Now, of course, there are consequences. People will get angry. People will put you down some more. Now, but the other consequences are that you live with it, you listen to it, you emotionally struggle with it, that becomes your voice. That's the other consequence. So there's consequences in both ways. But you decide which one you choose. one of the things that could be done to keep, family or relatives or whoever a little distant is you decide when you meet them. You decide how long you talk to them on the phone. You decide when to hang up. Of course, you do all of that with manners, and you are polite about it. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to scream at people. You don't have to do any of that. I had a friend who told her parents that she's like, I want to be treated like a queen whenever I come to your house.
Dang.
Can you imagine the reaction that she got?
Yeah.
What do you mean you want to be treated like a queen? You're supposed to serve us.
What I'm
But
also...
she knew what she wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's something, it was a process. It was a process that it was something that she did over time. And then at one point, she had made that decision and she put her foot down. And after that, there was a fight and it was, yelling and crying and all of that. But after that, they started treating her with respect. And these are parents. These are parents, and they started treating her with respect. She treated them with respect. She took care of them. She would help them out. But then she made it very clear that anything less than this is not acceptable. I spoke to a sheikh once about married Muslim sisters and their mothers. So that relationship. And when it becomes toxic, where, like they're getting into your business or, they're saying things to your husband and things like that. Like it happens in many families. And the sheikh was saying that it's okay to not, if it's like affecting her emotionally and psychologically, it's okay for the daughter to not talk to the mother for a while. Doesn't mean you cut them off. But it's okay to take a breather and come from a place of being an adult and not from a place of being a child. Can you think about this? That at one point, you have to decide that you are an adult. And these are your requirements for a healthy life, for a healthy mindset. Because what happens in our South Asian culture is you're forever a child. And you come from that place of maybe, fear or certain expectations and not reaching it or feeling bad about it, or you're not good enough, feeling all of that. But at one point you need to get some space and then come as an adult. Get rid of that identity of a child.
So many things to really unpack. I wish we could talk all day. But yeah, I feel like it's all, what I'm also getting is, subhanallah, that sister was so courageous, mashallah. Because it's also about seeing yourself as a human being and a person that is allowed to feel and allowed to take care of yourself, because I feel like a lot of the times we don't know we're allowed all of that, and we don't think we deserve it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's
it's something, it's good that you mentioned this, because when I talk to people, sometimes all I have to say is, yeah, go ahead and do that.
Give them the permission slip.
It's right. It is just that. But in the end, it's not about getting it from someone else, but it's about giving it to yourself.
Yeah.
That, you know what, it's okay. And let me just tell you this. I went through, and I think I'm still in the phase of this burnout. And this is because I had a lot going on all at the same time. It was a whole lot, and I had to keep, performing, keep, being productive and active. And I kind of had this just burnout, but I didn't fully realize it. So I was telling myself that, you know what, I'm going to give myself a couple of days just to relax. And then that turned into a week, and then that turned into 2 weeks, and I started feeling guilty. I'm like, wait a minute. It's so long. It's been just going on for so long, but I still don't feel like doing anything. And then I spoke to some of my friends, and alhamdulillah, these friends, like, they know me, and, we have that understanding, and they're like, of course you need a break. Of course, you need a long break, because of, the work that you do, it has so much pressure on you, emotional pressure. Of course you need it. Just relax, and it's okay. Take 2 more weeks if you need to. And it's so interesting because I teach people to give themselves permission, and I gave myself permission, but it had a deadline. It had that deadline, right? Because I expected myself to bounce back up in 3-4 days, because that's something typically what I do. What I didn't do is I listened to myself. I listened to myself saying that, okay, it's okay. Today's not, another day. It's okay. Rest. It's okay. Rest. But I also held that against myself that, man, I haven't been productive for like 2 weeks. I also did that. So, when I was telling you about the process that, you have to constantly practice this, but you also have the other side that's constantly coming back to you and telling you that, no, do it a little faster. Look at this podcast. Look at how many episodes they did. And we're not even there yet. What's going on? You can't keep up with their deadlines. We can't make time. What's going on? But it's really recognizing that, okay, no, this is what I can do right now, and this is what I'm doing. And another one is that you are where you are supposed to be. You're not supposed to be anywhere else but here. And whatever you did, this is what you're supposed to do. And you did it.
No, actually, something back to the topic you mentioned. I was so glad that you mentioned it, about forgiveness. And so is there a certain point where you're like, you know what? Can self-forgiveness turn into something negative? Like, can it start affecting you? Can you take it into a direction where it's actually harming you? Is it possible?
When it comes to, I think, hurting yourself or hurting other people, and you're like, oh, it's okay, I forgive myself. But you don't do anything about it. Like, let's say you are being short-tempered with certain people around you. And you're like, you know what, it's tough. I'm going through a hard time. It's stressful, and I forgive myself. And then you're like screaming and yelling at them again and again and again. Then you need to analyze yourself and see, okay, like, what are you doing to work on it? What are you doing to change course? Just like, we were talking about tawbah, is that you ask Allah for forgiveness. You feel bad, you ask Allah for forgiveness, and then you do something that's like a good deed, or you change the direction of where you're going, or you close doors to, whatever is bad for you. So with self-forgiveness, or, forgiving yourself because you hurt yourself or because you hurt others, is that, okay, what am I doing to make it better? What am I doing to understand myself better? If you find that you have blocks and you're not able to understand yourself, then go see a coach or a therapist or a counselor. Go take a program, go read a book, go listen to podcasts. Something that I always tell my clients is having some kind of an input where you have things that are coming to you. It's not just you and your thoughts. If you are taking, it's harsh, but let's just say if you're taking garbage out of your system, there's something else that needs to go in to fill that void, or else, you will naturally fill it up with garbage again. So with this, now with self-forgiveness, okay, once you forgive yourself, now what? What do you want to do that's different? What do you want to do that'll ensure that you're not repeating the same mistakes again, that you're not falling into the same pattern again? What do you want? Something that I do with couples, with marriage counseling, which I don't do too much of, but a little bit that comes into, comes in with my clients, is that, what's the cycle? What's the pattern, in an argument? What are certain triggers that you have that, okay, when I say this, he says that, and then I do this, and then he reacts, and then I walk away. Sometimes there's a cycle. And then we talk about, okay, where can we break this cycle? What can you do to make sure that it's not going in that direction again? So same thing with your own self. If let's say like eating snacks at night and then feeling horrible about it in the morning, if that is a problem, Then one easy step would be making sure you never have snacks in the night table. That could be one rule that you have. So, again, figuring out, okay, what needs to change, and then taking those steps to change it. You can't just forgive yourself and just let yourself be and not do anything about it.
We're about to go towards the ending of the podcast. And I think just as a closing thing, I wanted you to give some sort of an advice to that sister out there who is feeling the effects of all of the things that we mentioned, of criticism and shame and self-loathing. What is this one thing you can tell her to lift her up a little bit and start her on this journey of self-forgiveness?
So the first thing is that making self-forgiveness and self-compassion, what's that word?
Which word?
Unconditional.
Oh, okay.
Making self-forgiveness and self-compassion unconditional. That's one. Another one is surrounding yourself with people who are accepting and loving, whether it's in your physical space or online. A lot of people say that, but I don't have that. I don't have friends, or I don't have relatives here close by and things like that. The great thing about where, the time that we're living in is that you can find support anywhere. That's another one. If you have some deep, emotional or psychological experiences, then get professional help. You would probably need, anywhere from like 2 to, 10 sessions, wherever. But start the process, because it's a long life. The days are long, the months are long, the years are long, and just a little bit of understanding yourself and a little bit of tweaking will completely change the quality of your life and the relationships, because then you would see things differently. Your perception will be different. You won't be as reactive. You will understand people better. You won't feel hurt as much. Everything changes when you start to understand yourself better, when you start to feel comfortable with yourself. So it's definitely a journey, and you need to just get on board. There's no other way. There's no success. There's no happiness if you're not showing yourself compassion, if you're not accepting yourself and accepting your flaws. You will be missing out on a good life if you don't do that. So the other side to it is taking steps, changing your environment, listening to your inner thoughts, and holding yourself accountable to that, and being kind to yourself. So yeah, that's what I would have to say. It's a long final advice, but
I think it's a beautiful advice, and I think you have said wonderful things that I need to listen to a few times.
I think so as well.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies.
If there's something that you've benefited from today, we'll be so grateful if you'd share it with someone you know. It would help us out a lot if you'd review it on your favorite app and also subscribe to the podcast. You can contact us at Soulful Latte Podcast on Instagram and write to us at soulfullattepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing.